think there's been a continued fundamental improvement on the occupational side across all the markets. Certainly in UK, we've seen very robust rental growth in the more prime locations. I think rental growth on the continent has been a bit more muted. As we anticipated last year, supply has continued to remain in check across the region. And again, this is a fundamental difference compared to the run-up to the last peak in 2006-07. So fundamentally, for our business, we're quite bullish about the outlook for it. And there's some structural demand drivers that we've talked about earlier that are continuing to drive demand for logistics across Europe.
In terms of rental growth, as Mo said, the UK has been on fire with the rents pretty much everywhere, at least where we're invested in those global markets, beyond prior peak, which is good. And cap rates also below prior peak in the UK. The continent, again, a little bit, as Mo said, has been a little bit more of a muted story. We are seeing the ability to push rents in the markets where you see typically 95% occupancy or more. But that said, there is still quite a bit of alternative choice on the continent. In many of our markets, land is somewhat easier to come by than the UK. The UK is very land constrained. And so with that cap rate compression, typically you've been able to see more development competition against standing product. I think that has kept rents back a little bit. So call it cap rates have kept rents somewhat muted. I think there's still some room to go on cap rates. Certainly on the continent, the UK is probably about there for the next 6 months or so, maybe a little bit longer. And I think until we've seen cap rates on the continent normalize, and I think they will all normalize below prior peak, I think rents will still be under a little bit of pressure, but not everywhere. So I'll give you an example of one of the markets that's lagging the most, which is France, generally as a market. Rents are under pressure in Paris, but in Lyon, which is almost 100% occupied as a market, we are able to push rents somewhat. So we've really started to turn the corner, but it's a gradual shift, and I think that will gain momentum going into 16.
Okay, good. Ian, you wanted to pick that up.
Yeah, and I agree with what both speakers have said. I think there's also almost a slight two-tier market at the moment. There's a build-to-suit market where yield compression means that rents have dropped, construction prices have not gone up, but there's also those who have existing product in existing well-established logistic parks, and on those, we've all got some around here, we've been able to push rents. So even in a market where rents have actually dropped for build-to-suits, we've been able to push them up on existing product. And I think that's to do with both size, because often there are tenants who need space, even if you can build in 6 months. Some tenants need it either straight away, or they actually want to feel and touch what's going to be there. So it depends on the company. The other thing is that from this time last year, demand really has grown a lot, seeing much more demand.
And is that in all the markets that you're in, you're seeing that demand increasing? Yeah,
I mean, amazingly, I'd agree with you in France. We're seeing French demand has shot up. This time last year, France was still in a poor state. I think probably the government, sorry for the French people here, the government probably still is not helping their economy. But then as you go from Spain, where things have picked up, right the way through to Romania, where we're seeing huge increase in space, and other people, even on this panel, are trying to open up offices there and get in there. So that probably shows that the demand is there.